BookTube, welcome back to my channel and welcome to A Closer Book. This is a series where I talk about 3 of my recent reads, and in this installment I read 3 books by men. First up is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This is a young adult fiction, and you know me, I don't read a lot of young adult novels, but this one was pretty engaging. It's a story of 16-year-old Aza, A-Z-A. Her name is significant because she goes from the beginning to the end and back again. And that is how she lives her life. She has obsessive compulsive disorder. She's constantly thinking that anything that has crossed her boundaries is going to kill her. She's constantly tortured by the idea that she's going to die, except that it would probably be self-inflicted because she keeps opening up this wound on her finger and changing the bandage, except the more you open up the wound is the more susceptible you are to all the germs that you're obsessing about. Aza. Wish I could help her. But yeah, Aza has some mental disorder, and I don't want to make light of mental disorders, but it really was a sticking point for me with the book. I felt like the author paid a little bit too much attention. Like, I think he talks about her obsession just a little bit too much, and if someone had these thoughts, this book would definitely be a trigger for them. So I think this is a trigger warning for people who are dealing with that kind of a disorder. In any case, Aza is 16. Her best friend is Daisy, who writes sci-fi fan fiction and whose work Aza doesn't really keep up with. So there's a point where Daisy calls her out that she's a terrible friend. And I really enjoy the relatable friendship that these two girls seem to have, where they deal with each other. They like things about each other, but they're not completely accepting of themselves or of each other. The male lead in this book is a boy that Aza knew when she was much younger, and while they still live in the same geographical location, their lives are very different because now Aza is poor and Davis is rich. And that socioeconomic difference becomes important as we see how both groups relate to money and whether the money changes them. So Davis's father is missing and there's a reward out for him. So Aza and Daisy approach Davis because they're trying to get clues. They want to solve this mystery so that they can get the money. And that becomes like the starting point for their interaction, for them getting back into each other's lives, and the catalyst for everything to change. What I liked about the novel, I liked that the story was about a complex girl with a complex friend who writes almost as much as she talks, but still intentionally holds things back and yet blames people for not knowing her as well as she thinks that they should. I like that. She sounds a little bit like me. I like the discussion of mental health and the way the author talked about the necessity of controlling your thoughts, especially when they're destructive, but also how difficult that can be. I like the presence of a parent in this young adult novel, one who gives enough freedom for the story to move along, but yet still reins in the character to show that there is parental support and that these kids can't just go off and do whatever they feel like. I mean, that's something that's usually a little bit of a sticking point for me in young adult fiction. I also like the art and science discussion that the author uses. He even brought in these cool geographic references, so the setting of the book was a character. I like the epistolary editions, so we got to read Daisy's fan fiction, but also another character who was a blogger, and we got to see their online presence. That was pretty cool. And I like the moral of the story, which is that money changes things, but ultimately we have the power to accept or reject its authority over us. So overall, I really like this book. There were lots of things that I liked about it, and I was tempted to increase my rating from a 3 to a 4, and I think I even did at one point on Goodreads, but then I went back and changed it because there were a few things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like I said, I didn't love the way the author really focused on the mental issue that Aza was having, and I didn't like the disposability of the parents in the book. While I understand that young adult fiction is supposed to show young adults or teen characters going through life, coming of age, having to take responsibility for themselves, I don't like when an author feels like they have to kill off the parents in order for that to happen. Like, part of a parent's job is to bring their kids through some point, up to some point in life, and then kind of step back in some aspects of their life and allow them to live, allow them to take on added responsibility. So it's not necessary for the parents to die, for the kids to prove that they're at that point. Like, you could just have the parents step back. So I didn't appreciate how the author disposed of the parents in order for that to happen. But maybe I'm just hard on young adult fiction. I mean, I'm not the target demographic after all, so let's go back to what I'm comfortable with. Next, I read The White Tiger by Arvin Adiga, and this won the Man Booker Prize in 2008. So this is from my hashtag Man Booker 50 challenge. The White Tiger himself is Balaram Halwai. He starts off as a young boy born into poverty where his parents don't even care enough to give him a name. He's called Muna, means boy, and so when he goes to school and he is asked his name and he says Muna, the teacher says, no, that can't be your name, that's not a name, that's just boy. So the teacher gives him a name, and throughout the course of his life, Balaram takes different names depending on who he wants to be. When we meet Balaram, he introduces himself to us as the White Tiger, as a successful businessman and entrepreneur. And he's also introducing himself to the Premier of China, who's about to visit India, and who Balaram wants to give the lowdown and skinny on what it means to be a successful Indian businessman. You often hear about Chinese businessmen. Well, Balaram is going to tell you what it takes to be the owner of a business, what it takes to be known as the outsourcing capital of the world, what it takes to overcome the disadvantages of being born in a low caste and traversing all the different layers to get to the level where you're a successful businessman, much feared, much respected in your community. So Balaram introduces us to his family and the complexities of his family dynamic, where his mother has died, but his grandmother is the matriarch, ruler over her sons and her grandsons, opposite to what you might expect in a society that has historically diminished the role of women. In this one, Balaram's grandmother is the one to be feared. So they're in a caste of servitude, which means that Balaram's father before him, his brothers before him, and Balaram's life should be that of a servant, except that his father escaped to become a rickshaw driver, and he has dreams that Balaram, or Muna as he had called him, will grow up to not just be boy, but to be man, to escape servitude. And so Balaram is adamant that he will not be a servant and he will escape this caste by all means necessary. So over the course of 7 letters that he writes over 7 nights to the premier, Balaram moves from gaining your sympathy to probably gaining a little bit of your respect and admiration, even as he explains and justifies the evil acts that he has done to get where he is. Some of it starts to feel like it's justified. Balaram is really the White Tiger. The book is a breathtaking glimpse into the poverty and corruption that I expect is par for the course. Breathtaking because the rich descriptions almost channel you into the slums and the sewage-infested streets of Delhi, where the author describes the backdrop of a city that he wants to escape by any means necessary, and that he will do anything, including commit murder, to escape. I found the novel engaging and funny and clever, a well-written satire about a bad situation, an evil man justifying his crimes by blaming his victims. But in the end, I thought that the novel lacked a little bit of sparkle. I was looking for something spectacular to happen at the end, and it didn't happen, and so it went a little bit south right in the end for me. But ultimately, I really like this book. This was a Man Booker Prize winner, and I could see why it won. This is one of those books where the author uses a man's life to personify the political drama that happens in a country. And I thought that this was a really great example. I just wish that it had a little bit more sparkle, a little bit more shine. And so ultimately, I gave it 4, not quite 5 stars. But this was a Man Booker Prize winner in 2008, and I think it was well deserved. Next, I read The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, and this is another Man Booker Prize winning novel, so you know to expect a person's life personifying a political commentary. This time our main character is Stevens. He's a butler to an English aristocrat in the middle of the 1900s. His master is pretty important in English history at the time of the war, in that while he's not necessarily a part of the government, he does entertain government leaders at his home, and so Stevens serves them without realizing the impact that he is having on world politics. Towards the end of his career, Stevens' master dies, and so the house is taken over by an American, and so Stevens now has to adjust to this new way of life, to new master, new leadership. And eventually his master goes on holiday and invites him to take the car out for a drive. And so Stevens has an opportunity to go visit a lady who used to live and work in their household and with whom he had a slightly romantic connection. And this trip is an opportunity for him to kind of revisit his memories, come to terms with some of the choices that he's made, but not just through his own stream of consciousness, as he relates his story to new people, as he meets people who knew him, but also as he reflects on the things that have happened. He's forced to acknowledge that his life, his master, was not exactly what he thought it was, that his life hasn't really gone the way he might have wanted it to. Stevens was a butler to a pretty important man in British history. He was a Nazi sympathizer, and he likely committed treason while Stevens catered to his beck and call. And in his service, Stevens sacrifices even the basic rights that should be afforded to a man, the right to a woman to love and the opportunity to bury his father when he dies. Now that his lordship has died and Darlington Hall has a new master, Stevens will not even degrade his position as a dignified butler to even cast a mean glance at his previous employer and some of the mistakes that he might have made. It is pretty easy to visualize the caricatured character that Ishiguro paints in this novel, a formal man who spent his life ignoring his own needs as he serves a probably misguided master. But Stevens' butlership is an allegory for those of us who refuse to engage in the politics that is happening around us and who allow wars to be fought in our midst, even assisting in our refusal to get involved or to act. So that's it. That's a closer book of these 3 recent reads. Leave me a comment down below if you've read any of these and you want to talk about them. But thanks for watching this video, and until next time, happy reading. Bye!